Hi guys, welcome to Liz Inspired Tech. Today we are going to go through the live code session for lesson 5. This session is going to be in two parts. The first part is where we're going to create multiple tables, and the second part is where we are going to handle the multiple tables. Let's jump right in and head over to Jupyter Notebook. I have it opened already, but in case you would want to open yours, just type Jupyter Notebook in your command prompt and wait for it to open. So at the right side of my screen, I have the code snippets for all 11 tables we are going to be creating today, and the code snippets to populate all those tables. I would want us to create a new file, a new Python 3 kernel to handle just this lesson. So right here we click on new and Python 3 kernel, and we would want to rename this to multiple tables, creating multiple tables in SQL. So we rename, and I would bring it back to its initial position. So the first thing we'll do is to import SQLite 3, which is the database we are working with, and we'll import pandas, which is a Python library, and alias it to PD, so that whenever we need it in our code session, we will just use PD. So this library is going to help us to read the SQL queries we are going to be typing today. So we'll use Shift Enter to run the cell. In our first cell, we are going to use a Python function that is going to help us to create the SQL tables. So we'll give it a name that best suits its role. To create a Python function, we'll start with def, and then we give it a name, create table, and then we open a bracket and close the bracket. So now in Python, right here in this bracket, we could put what we call a parameter. And a parameter is like a variable that will hold the data we would want to use in the function. So for instance, let's say in the function we would need something when we are executing this function, and we want to put it in the function. So right here we'll put the parameter to hold that data, even though we don't have the data immediately, so that when we are using the function, since Python functions are reusable codes, we can insert exactly what we need right in the brackets. But in this function, we don't need a parameter, so we'll just go ahead and put our colon. And the first thing we'll do is establish a connection to the database. So we'll have connection is equal to and then right here in brackets we give the name of our database. So data then we'll create a cursor object. So this cursor object will help us to interact with the database. So right below it, you realize that in our Python function, we are creating some space before we type. This is called indentation. This is showing us that all the code snippet here is inside this function. In case we want to type something that is outside the function, we can use Shift Tab to send the cursor back to the beginning of the line. But when we want to create an indent, we just use the tab. So right here, we are going to use the cursor to execute the SQL query. So and then in a bracket, we will put the query. So you can see that the first query has 7 lines, and in SQL, a multiple line statement, and also in Python, would need triple quotes. So right here in the triple quotes, we can put our SQL query. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm not going to copy the heading, and then I'll put it inside the query. Now in SQL, indentation doesn't matter, but I'll indent it to make my code more readable. So right here, after we put the query, I tab again, I would commit the changes and close the connection. So below it, I would want to call the function. So we have created a function and it's stored somewhere in the computer's memory, but to call it and to use it, we would have to write the name of the function outside the function. That's why there is no indent. And here we have create table. So we'll run this and our table will be created. So let's run this by pressing shift and enter. And there we have created our table. So now we would want to first of all view the table to see whether our table has been created. So we are going to create a new Python function, that's view table. And please always remember to close your connection, because when we establish a connection and it's running and we establish multiple connections, there's a limit to the number of connections that must run at a particular point in time. So if you don't close it and the number reaches that limit, would result in unexpected behavior within our program. So let's go ahead and create our view table. The first thing we'll do is create a connection. And then the next thing we'll do is create a cursor object. So right here, we are going to use an SQL query to select all the tables from the orders table. And we are going to assign this to query. So it's going to be stored and we are going to reuse it. And then right here, we are going to use pandas with a function called read SQL query to read the query. So the first thing we'll do is we are putting in two arguments, query and the connection, and then we'll assign it to, it's going to return a data frame, so we'll just use df. So right down here, we are going to close the connection. The Python function can return data that is stored in it. So right here, we want to return the data frame. And then out of the function, we would call the function view table. So our table has been created beautifully, and the next thing we want to do is to populate our table. Now watch this carefully. The create table function is going to be very similar to the populate table function. So what we'll do is we are going to do literally the same thing. We are going to give it a different name, populate table. So def populate table, no parameter, and then we would establish a connection and then we'll create a cursor object. Then we use the cursor object to execute the SQL query. we put it in brackets and in triple quotes, and then we'll come here and copy our code snippet to populate the orders table. We would create some indents for a better organization and easy readability. Remove these unnecessary spaces and then close the connection. Commit first and then we'll close the connection. So outside here, we'll just call the function populate table, and there we go. Our table has been populated. So we can go up here and rerun the view table cell to view the new populated table. So this is our populated table. So that's just for one table. We have created the orders table and we have populated the orders table. So the next table we are going to create and populate is the customers table. Now watch this. It's going to be very easy because the only thing we are going to be changing is the code, the SQL code snippet. The functions are going to remain the same. So in the create table, we are going to copy the code snippet to create the customers table right here. And then we are going to place it here. And we would run. Then we can view the table first before we could populate it. So we'll change orders to customers. And run it. So since we have not populated it, the only thing we can see is the column names. So now we would populate the table by copying the information here. And pasting it in here. We'll create some indents for easy readability. So we have populated our table and we would want to view the new populated table. So we come back to view table and we shift and enter. So this is our new table we have populated. We are done with the second table. You see why Python functions are so effective? Because we didn't have to type the whole code again. We just had to put in their respective SQL code snippets. So the next table we are going to create is the products table. We will copy this and go to create the create table function and we'll paste it right here in the create table function. We'll run this by pressing shift and enter. The table has been created. Let's view the table. We are going to select all from customers and select all from products. And then we can see the column names of the products. Next, we would want to populate the products table. So we'll come right down here and copy this information, the code snippet to populate the products table. And we'll come and replace this code snippet for the customers table with the products table. So I would want easy readability of my code, so I would indent it. And we can enter. So our table has been populated. We can have a look at it by just viewing it in with the view table function. So there we have our products table. We are done with 3 already. Isn't it amazing? Okay, so the next table we are going to create is a small table called table 1. So I'll just copy this information and come to the create table function and I would create, okay, I'm going to copy this come to the create table function and paste it here. Let's put some indents for easy readability. Okay, and then we can run this. So let's view the table. We want to view table 1, not product table. So we change this to table 1. So we just have 2 columns. That's the fruit ID and the fruit name. So we want to populate table 1. So we come here. So we want to populate table 1. So we'll come here and copy the code snippet to populate table 1, and we replace this whole code section with it. I need some indent here. Then we can go ahead and run this. Come back and view it. And right there we have our new table, table 1. We'll do the same for table 2. And then we can go ahead and run this to create the table 2. Let's view table 2. We can just change this to 2, and then we have table 2's columns, an empty table, and we want to populate table 2. So here we can populate table 2 with the code snippet for populating the SQL query for populating table 2. We have populated table 2 just by running this cell, and we can come back and run the view table cell to view table 2. There we have table 2. Guys, can you imagine we have already created and populated and viewed 5 tables. We have 6 more to go. Let's keep going. Let's copy the code snippet to create the others table. You can come right here and create it. We enter and our table has been created. I would want to view the others table. So there we have the 3 columns, that's author ID, author name, and birth year. Now let's go ahead and populate this table. Okay, there we go. Done. So we are done with the 7th table. We are done with the 6th table, sorry. So here we can view our table, our authors table. Now we are going ahead to the 7th table, and that is the books table. So we are going to copy the code snippet to create the books table. There we go, we have created the books table. We would want to view the books table. There we can see the empty table with just column names. And then we would want to populate this table. Let's give it some indentation for easy readability. And there we go. We have populated the books table. we can go ahead and view it. Guys, and just like that, we have created 7 different tables with Python functions. Okay, let's move on to the 8th table. That is the habitat table. Now you might wonder why we are creating all these tables. It's because in part 2 we are going to handle these tables and learn how to work with different tables and gain meaningful insights from the data found in these tables. So right here we are creating the habitat table with 3 columns, and we want to view it before we populate it. Now we can go ahead and populate it. Add some indents. And there we go. We have just populated a habitat table with 3 columns and 5 rows of data. Now we are creating this will be our 9th table. That's the animals table. We are almost done. We are creating 11 tables in all, and if we are on the 9th table, we are almost done. So here we have the SQL query to create the animals table. And I would want to view the animals table. So there we have it. So let's just go ahead and populate the animals table. And we can go ahead and view it now. Wonderful. If you've gotten this far, you are so good. We have 2 more tables to create: March orders table and April orders table. So we can go ahead to the create table function to create the March orders table. We run the cell by pressing Shift Enter, and we would want to view the table before populating it. So we just have 4 columns. So right now with our SQL query to populate the March orders table, we would populate this table with the populate table function. Now we can view our last but one table called March orders and head on to the final table we are creating today. April orders. Now let's view our April orders table. And as you can see, we have an empty table with just 4 columns. Now we would want to insert the data for our very last table. I would create an indent and run. So let's view our last table, and there we have it. Guys, if you have watched up to this point, congratulations, and see you in part 2 where we handle these tables and retrieve meaningful information with SQL queries. Bye bye.